Hi and welcome to a new video. It's lovely to have you here. Yesterday I went to the library to renew my library card and I couldn't resist coming away with a little haul, so I thought I would share that with you today. It's still January, it's still raining, the world is in chaos, and I thought maybe we could look at these books together for a little bit of escapism and joy on a wet January afternoon. So I've got the big bag of library books here and I've got some fresh coffee, so let's dive in. So the first book we've got out of the bag is Beetle Boy by M.G. Leonard, and I'm so excited to finally get my hands on this book because it is never in the library. I always think that's an indicator of a really good book when it's just never in its spot on the shelves, but I got lucky this time. This is a really beautiful book. I love the beetle illustrations on the front, and it's also got giant beetles on the printed edges of the novel as well. It's also published by Chicken House, and I think I've said before that everything I've ever read from Chicken House has been so original and inventive, and I've enjoyed books they have published so much that I know when a book is published by this house that I'm probably going to really enjoy it. I've wanted to read this book for a while. I took a writing course with the Children's Writing Academy, the Golden Goose Academy, last year, and the founder of the Golden Goose Academy, Imogen Cooper, singled this book out as a novel which has a fantastic premise that you can sum up in a sentence. In this case, boy befriends beetle and they solve a mystery, which is already really intriguing. So this is the story of our hero Darkus, whose father has just disappeared, and coincidentally at the same time he meets a giant beetle who falls out of the trouser leg of his new next door neighbour, which is pretty gross. But the beetle seems to want to communicate with Darkus, and Darkus wonders, how can a boy and a beetle be friends, and what might the beetle have to do with the disappearance of his father, and what does the beetle have to do with the appearance of somebody named Lucretia Cutter, who has a particularly creepy taste in jewellery. I've read several reviews which have compared this book to Roald Dahl's stories, and in fact the publisher's foreword inside notes that the book is very Dahl-esque in terms of being very funny, very warm-hearted, and also completely disgusting. He also notes that it is full of friendship, has a really gripping mystery in it, and also features a really outrageously nasty villain who maybe is the Lucretia Cutter of the blurb. I'm here for all of that. That sounds like so much fun. So I'm really looking forward to getting started on this one. So the next book I have to share is The Wolves of Willoughby Chase by Joan Aiken, and I chose this book largely because I would like to read more children's classics this year, and I know this is a really beloved book by so many people who grew up reading it and have enjoyed rereading it into adulthood. The book takes place in an alternate version of England, an alternate 19th century, where a channel tunnel has just been completed between Dover and Calais, and the easy access between the larger continent and the UK means that many wolves seeking a milder winter have been driven out of Europe and Russia to the British Isles. Against this backdrop, we have the story of cousins Bonnie and Sylvia, who have just acquired a new governess, Miss Slycarp. But she seems really horrible. She shuts Bonnie in a cupboard, she fires all the servants, and she sends the girls away from their home, Willoughby Chase, to a place where the blurb says they will never be found. And I think the story is then about Bonnie and Sylvia and their attempts to outwit Miss Slycarp and her network of criminals. I'm already really gripped by this premise, and I love the idea of a 19th century alternate England, and I'm really interested to see what that will look like apart from there being a different monarch on the throne and there being a completed Dover to Calais Channel tunnel. I also think that this is going to be the perfect children's classic to start the year with, since it begins at least set in winter. The first two sentences read, "It was dusk, winter dusk. Snow lay white and shining over the pleated hills, and icicles hung from the forest trees." So I think this is going to be a very seasonally appropriate book to read in January. The third book coming out of the bag is a return to M.G. Leonard. I've got The Arctic Railway Assassin, which is part of the Mysteries on Trains series that M.G. Leonard writes with her friend Sam Sedgman. I love these stories in which our young hero detective Harrison Beck, better known as Hal, takes a series of international train journeys with his beautifully turned out, ever dapper Uncle Nat, who has one of the best jobs in detective fiction. He's a travel writer who specialises in train journeys. On each one of these journeys, a mystery has come to light, and Uncle Nat and Hal have found themselves in the thick of it, racing against time to solve the mystery before the journey comes to an end. So in this instalment, Hal and Uncle Nat are travelling through Sweden by train to reach the Arctic Circle, where they are hoping for a glimpse of the Northern Lights. But as they board the train in Stockholm, they realise they are being followed. And as the journey goes on, parts of Uncle Nat's backstory, his past, return to haunt him, and all of Hal's detective and observational powers are going to be put to the test as the two of them realise they have to outsmart an assassin before the train reaches its destination, in what the blurb says is their most tense adventure yet. I enjoy this series so much. The mysteries are always so well written and gripping, and every journey is one I'd like to take, so there's a little bit of vicarious travel involved, as well as them just being great reads. The writing always draws you into the landscape of a particular journey, so you really feel like you're there. The trains are also beautifully described, both their kind of physical presence, their exteriors and interiors, but also their working mechanisms and their histories. I love the way that the train in each novel is really integral to the plot and the resolution of the mystery in each case. It's definitely not the situation that the train is just a transportation device, but in each book the trains really are characters in their own right. You can tell that so much research has been done for each book, and that this series really has been written by train enthusiasts. I also love seeing how the protagonists change and develop over this series. A little bit more of Uncle Nat's backstory is coming out in the later books, and that's really fascinating, but it's also really fascinating to see how Hal responds to that as a person, and also how that informs his detecting style and his relationship with his uncle as he's himself growing up and kind of finding his feet in the world. I've always wanted to go to northern Sweden. I've always wanted to see the Northern Lights, so I think this book is going to be a little bit inspiring, as well as being another great read in this series. And the last book I've got in the bag is Kay Umansky's Witch in Winter, another really seasonally appropriate book to have brought home from the library. All the other books I've been talking about today have been, I think, aimed at like the 9 to 12 age range, but I would say this is appropriate for younger readers as well, maybe like a 6 to 10 sort of an age range, although anybody can enjoy it. and definitely will. Kay Umansky is obviously a classic comic writer for children, and the story here is offset by really fabulously witty illustrations by Ashley King. Try and show you one here. So the book follows our heroine Elsie Pickles, who has recently discovered that she is a witch. And Elsie lives in a small town where nothing ever really happens, and nothing ever really did happen until a witch named Magenta Sharp moved into the adjacent forest to the town, Crookfinger Forest. And that's when Elsie's witchy skills were really ignited. And in this book, Magenta has unfortunately disappeared. She's left her witch's tower abandoned in Crookfinger Forest, and she has simply gone. And Elsie and her friends move into the tower because it's very dangerous to leave a witch's tower unattended. But a mysterious stranger comes sniffing around the tower wanting to move in, and there's also a snowstorm which causes all sorts of chaos, and Magenta is still missing. So Elsie has to use all of her resources and her newfound witchy skills to find missing Magenta and to save the day. This book and all of the other books in the same series are fantastically funny in a really dry, witty way. All of the characters are flamboyant and larger than life. The tower itself is sentient and quite stubborn, which brings problems of its own. In this book, the weather is dreadful, there's a sausage-stealing dog, and at the heart of it all there's a sensible teenage witch who is just trying to develop her skills and has to kind of hold everything together. There are overtones of Terry Pratchett and Monty Python to this series of books as well, and really each one is just sort of a wonderfully enchanting, hilarious adventure farce full of magic. I'm really looking forward to a reread of this one. I think this is one of the most comforting series I know and would thoroughly recommend to anyone. So those are all the books I have in my library haul today. Having spoken a little bit about each one of them, I'm now really excited to get reading. So I think that's what I'm going to do with the rest of this gloomy, foggy January afternoon. Let me know if you've read anything good recently, whether there are any comfort books that you tend to read at this time of year, and whether you've brought anything good home from the library recently. I would love to know. I hope you take good care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.